The courtroom was silent as all eyes turned to the young black girl standing confidently before the judge. At just 16, Leah Anderson looked like an ordinary teenager, but she had chosen to represent herself in one of the most serious cases in her neighborhood. The judge, Mr. Patterson, leaned forward, his sharp voice dripping with sarcasm. "You think you can play lawyer in this courtroom? This isn't a school play, young lady." The room erupted in quiet laughter, but Leah stayed calm. She didn't flinch, her gaze steady as she prepared to speak. When Leah began to present her case, the courtroom grew quieter with each passing second. She tore apart the arguments of the opposing side with confidence, citing laws and legal precedents that even experienced lawyers sometimes struggled with. By the time she finished, even the judge looked stunned. "Who are you?" the judge asked, his disbelief showing. Leah smiled faintly, pulling out a document from her bag. "I'm Leah Anderson, Your Honor, a certified lawyer who passed the bar exam at 16. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Sit back, relax, and grab your popcorn. Leah's story is just heating up. Can this 16-year-old take on the courtroom and prove herself? You won't want to miss what happens next. Leah Anderson wasn't like most 16-year-olds. While others her age were busy with sports or hanging out at the mall, Leah spent her evenings buried in books about justice and law. Her hunger for knowledge wasn't just a hobby, it was her way of preparing for the future. Leah lived with her grandmother, Clara Anderson, in a modest home in the quiet suburbs of Chicago. Their house wasn't fancy, but it was filled with warmth, laughter, and an incredible collection of books. The shelves in their small living room sagged under the weight of old legal texts, encyclopedias, and biographies of famous lawyers. Clara always believed in the power of education, and she made sure Leah had access to as much knowledge as possible. "You don't need wealth to make a difference," Clara would say as she brewed tea in their tiny kitchen. "All you need is your mind and the courage to use it." Leah's parents had died in a car accident when she was just 2 years old, leaving Clara to raise her granddaughter alone. Despite the hardships, Clara never let Leah feel deprived. She became both a mother and father figure to Leah, teaching her the values of hard work, humility, and resilience. By the time Leah was 7, her intelligence was impossible to ignore. She was the kind of kid who would ask tough questions during story time, turning simple fairy tales into debates. "Why didn't Cinderella take the prince to court for losing her shoe?" Leah asked one day, frowning at the book in her lap. Clara burst out laughing, but Leah was serious. Soon after, Leah discovered her love for law. She would spend hours flipping through Clara's old legal books, fascinated by the stories of courtroom battles and justice. By the time she was 12, she could out-argue most adults. Leah even attended community debates and stunned everyone with her sharp reasoning and quick wit. Clara noticed Leah's gift and did everything she could to nurture it. When Leah asked for more books, Clara found them. When Leah needed help researching case studies, Clara sat by her side, even though the legal jargon often confused her. As Leah grew older, her passion only deepened. At 14, she started taking online law courses, earning certificates and accolades that most adults would struggle to achieve. At 15, she decided to take the bar exam, a test most people spend years preparing for. Clara was hesitant at first. "Leah, are you sure about this?" "It's a lot of pressure," Clara asked one evening as Leah studied late into the night. Leah looked up from her desk, determination shining in her eyes. "Grandma, I've studied the law for as long as I can remember. I know I can do this." And she did. Leah passed the bar exam on her first try, shocking everyone except Clara, who always knew her granddaughter was destined for greatness. Despite her success, Leah remained humble. She didn't see her intelligence as a reason to show off. Instead, she viewed it as a responsibility, a way to help others. Clara's words stayed with her. "Use your gifts to make the world a better place, Leah. That's the only kind of success that matters." So when Leah heard about Jamal Turner's case, a missing teenager the police seemed to have forgotten, she knew she had to step in. It didn't matter that she was young or that people doubted her abilities. She was ready to prove them all wrong and fight for justice, no matter the odds. It was a rainy evening when Leah first heard about Jamal Turner's disappearance. She and her grandmother were attending a local community meeting in the neighborhood church basement. The room was filled with worried faces and hushed murmurs. Leah sat quietly, observing as neighbors voiced their frustrations. "He's just a kid," shouted Mrs. Carter, a family friend. "And the police? They haven't done a thing. It's been 2 weeks since Jamal went missing." Leah's attention sharpened. Jamal Turner, a 17-year-old boy from their neighborhood, had vanished without a trace. His mother, Mrs. Turner, sat at the front of the room, her eyes red and swollen. She held a crumpled photograph of Jamal in her trembling hands. "We all know what this is about," a man in the back muttered bitterly. "They don't care about finding a black kid from our neighborhood. If he were from some rich suburb, they'd have a search party out." The crowd nodded in agreement, frustration bubbling to the surface. Leah listened intently, piecing together the story. Jamal had been working part-time at a factory owned by a wealthy businessman named Victor Kane. 2 days before he went missing, Jamal had a heated argument with Kane over unfair wages and unsafe working conditions. The police dismissed the fight as unimportant and claimed there was no evidence to link Kane to Jamal's disappearance. Leah frowned. Something didn't add up. After the meeting, Leah approached Mrs. Turner, who was speaking quietly with some neighbors. "Mrs. Turner," Leah said softly, "I'm really sorry about what you're going through." Mrs. Turner looked at Leah and managed a weak smile. "Thank you, sweetheart." "I want to help," Leah said, her voice firm. "I think we can find out what really happened to Jamal." Mrs. Turner blinked in surprise. "Help? How?" Leah straightened her shoulders. "I'm a lawyer. Well, technically, I passed the bar last year. I know it's hard to believe, but I've studied cases like this and I think I can make a difference." Mrs. Turner hesitated, clearly unsure whether to take Leah seriously. "I don't know, Leah. You're young and this is serious. Victor Kane is a powerful man." "I know," Leah replied, her eyes steady. "That's exactly why we can't let him get away with it. I'll start by looking into Jamal's job at the factory and gathering evidence. If we can prove that Kane is involved, we can take this to court." One of the neighbors nearby scoffed. "A teenager? Taking Victor Kane to court? Are you crazy?" Leah ignored the comment. She looked directly at Mrs. Turner. "Please just give me a chance. I won't let you down." Mrs. Turner studied Leah's face for a long moment before finally nodding. "Okay, Leah, I'll trust you. But please, bring my son home." With that, Leah had her first client. She didn't know how deep this case would go or how many obstacles would stand in her way, but one thing was certain. She wasn't backing down. The next day, Leah got to work. She started by speaking to Jamal's best friend, Malik. They met at the local basketball court where Malik was shooting hoops with a group of kids. "Malik," Leah called out as she approached, "can I talk to you for a second?" Malik wiped sweat off his forehead and walked over. "What's up, Leah?" "I'm looking into Jamal's disappearance. Mrs. Turner said you two were close. Do you remember anything unusual happening before he went missing?" Malik's face darkened. "Yeah, he was mad about something. Said the factory was cheating people out of their pay. He even told Kane to his face that he was going to report him." Leah's ears perked up. "Report him? To who?" "The labor board or something," Malik said. "Jamal wasn't scared of anyone, but I told him to be careful. Kane doesn't like being challenged." Leah nodded. "Do you know if Jamal had any proof, like pay stubs or emails?" Malik thought for a moment. "He mentioned keeping copies of stuff in his locker at the factory." Leah's mind raced. If Jamal had evidence, it might still be at the factory, but getting access wouldn't be easy. As she walked home that evening, Leah replayed everything Malik had said. Jamal had been brave enough to stand up to Kane, and now he was missing. Leah was determined to uncover the truth, no matter what it took. Leah sat at her desk, her room lit by the soft glow of a lamp. Papers, sticky notes, and her laptop were spread across the surface as she pieced together everything she had learned so far. The connection between Jamal's disappearance and Victor Kane seemed undeniable, but Leah needed hard evidence to back it up. Her first step was to dig into Victor Kane's background. She knew that someone as powerful as Kane wouldn't have a spotless record. With the help of her tech-savvy best friend Marcus, she planned to look for anything that could link Kane to shady business practices or foul play. Marcus was a self-taught hacker and one of the brightest kids in the neighborhood. Leah called him over the next morning. He arrived with his laptop tucked under his arm and a bag of snacks in hand. "All right, Leah," Marcus said as he sat at the dining table cracking his knuckles. "What do you need?" I need everything you can find on Victor Kane, Leah replied. Anything about his factory, employees, or legal troubles. Marcus grinned. Easy. Give me an hour. While Marcus worked, Leah focused on the factory itself. She decided to visit the location and see if she could find Jamal's locker or talk to any of the employees who might know what happened. That afternoon, Leah put on her backpack and headed to Kane Industries, the factory where Jamal worked. The building was massive, with towering chimneys and a chain-link fence surrounding the property. Security guards patrolled the entrance, making it clear that Leah couldn't just waltz inside. Leah took a deep breath and approached one of the workers coming out of the building for a break. The man looked exhausted, his clothes stained with grease. "Excuse me," Leah said politely. "I'm looking for information about Jamal Turner. He worked here before he went missing." The man's expression darkened. He glanced around nervously before replying, "I don't know anything about that. You should leave." "Please," Leah urged. "I'm just trying to help his family find him. Anything you know could make a difference." The man hesitated, then lowered his voice. "Jamal was a good kid, but he got into trouble with Mr. Kane. He was talking about exposing how the factory cuts corners and cheats workers. People warned him to stay quiet, but he wouldn't back down." Leah leaned in closer. "Do you know if he left anything behind? Documents or proof?" "He had a locker in the back," the man whispered. "But good luck getting in there. Kane's got security watching everything." Leah nodded, her mind already racing with ideas. "Thank you." Back home, Marcus had made progress. He tapped on his keyboard as Leah entered the room. "You're not going to believe this," he said, spinning his laptop toward her. On the screen was a list of lawsuits filed against Victor Kane. Most were settled out of court, but they all had one thing in common: complaints about unfair treatment of employees, unpaid wages, and dangerous working conditions. "This guy's been playing dirty for years," Marcus said. "But he's got money and lawyers to make problems disappear." Leah's jaw tightened. Not this time. She shared what she had learned at the factory, and together, they came up with a plan. Marcus would hack into the factory's digital records to look for payroll discrepancies, while Leah would figure out a way to access Jamal's locker. That night, Leah barely slept. The next morning, she disguised herself as a delivery worker, donning a cap and uniform she borrowed from a friend. With a clipboard in hand, she approached the factory's back entrance, pretending to deliver a package. "Delivery for Mr. Kane," she said confidently to the guard. The guard barely glanced at her before waving her through. Once inside, Leah moved quickly, her heart pounding in her chest. She found the row of lockers and scanned the names until she spotted Jamal's. The lock was intact, but Leah had come prepared. Pulling a hairpin from her pocket, she carefully picked the lock, her fingers trembling with urgency. After a few tense moments, the lock clicked open. Inside, Leah found exactly what she was looking for: folders stuffed with papers, pay stubs, and notes in Jamal's handwriting. She quickly stuffed everything into her backpack and slipped out of the factory before anyone noticed. Once she was safely home, she spread the documents across her desk. Leah's eyes widened as she read through the files. Jamal had uncovered a web of corruption, including falsified safety reports and stolen wages. One name appeared repeatedly in his notes: Victor Kane. "This is it," Leah whispered. "This is the proof we need." But her relief was short-lived. The next day, a black SUV pulled up outside Leah's house. A man in a suit stepped out and knocked on the door. When Leah answered, the man gave her a chilling smile. "Miss Anderson, I hear you've been asking a lot of questions about Mr. Kane. I'd suggest you stop, for your own good." Leah's heart raced, but she refused to show fear. "I'm not scared of bullies," she said, staring him down. The man smirked. "Suit yourself, but don't say I didn't warn you." As the SUV drove away, Leah knew one thing for sure: the fight was just beginning. The courtroom was packed as Leah prepared to make her first major move. She filed a motion to subpoena Victor Kane's records, knowing it was a critical step to proving her case. Standing before Judge Patterson, Leah's voice was steady, though she felt the weight of the courtroom's attention. "I believe these records will show a pattern of corruption, Your Honor," Leah argued, her eyes locking with the skeptical judge. Judge Patterson leaned back, a smirk playing on his lips. "Miss Anderson, this is a courtroom, not a playground. I can't hand over such sensitive documents because you're curious." Leah held her ground, flipping through her notes. "Your Honor, according to legal precedent in Franklin versus Harding, subpoenaing company records is justified if there's probable cause for criminal activity." The judge raised his eyebrows, caught off guard. After a moment's pause, he sighed. "Fine, you've made your case. The motion is granted." The courtroom buzzed with whispers. Kane's lawyer, Mr. Prescott, stood and sneered. "Congratulations, young lady. You're playing with fire." But Leah didn't falter. Behind her, rows of community members nodded in support, their presence reminding her why she was doing this. Leah's victory in court was just the beginning of a storm. As news of the subpoena spread, the backlash started. One morning she found an anonymous letter slipped under her door. The words chilled her to the core. "Drop the case, or you'll regret it." Leah showed the letter to Marcus, her tech-savvy best friend. "This can't scare us," Leah said firmly, "but we need to know who's behind it." Marcus worked late into the night, using his computer to trace the source of the threats. His face lit up when he found a lead. "Got it," he exclaimed. "These messages are linked to Lucas Harper, a private investigator on Kane's payroll." Leah's suspicions were confirmed. Kane was trying to intimidate her, but she refused to back down. The breakthrough came when Leah tracked down LaToya Bennett, a former factory worker who had left Kane Industries under mysterious circumstances. LaToya hesitated when Leah first approached her. "Miss Bennett, Jamal Turner needs your help," Leah pleaded. "We can't do this without you." LaToya's face softened. "I'll testify," she said. "Jamal confronted Kane about unpaid wages. He said he had proof, but I told him to be careful. I never saw him again." LaToya's testimony became a crucial piece of Leah's case. The threats didn't stop, but they only fueled Leah's determination. With LaToya's testimony and Marcus's skills, Leah's team uncovered a treasure trove of evidence. One night, Marcus called Leah over to his screen. "Check this out," he said, pointing to a folder labeled Confidential in the factory's digital files. Inside was a surveillance video. Leah's heart sank as she watched the footage. Jamal was dragged into a storage room by two of Kane's guards. He struggled, yelling something they couldn't hear before disappearing from view. "This is it," Leah whispered. "This proves everything." In court, Leah presented the video. The room erupted in shock as the footage played on the screen. Mr. Prescott stood, his voice full of disdain. "Your Honor, this video is obviously fake. Anyone can doctor a recording." Leah had anticipated this. She brought in an expert who verified the footage's authenticity, leaving no doubt about its legitimacy. The evidence caused a media frenzy. Protesters gathered outside the factory, holding signs that read, "Justice for Jamal," and "Shut Kane down." The tide was finally turning in Leah's favor. The courtroom was electric on the final day of the trial. Leah stood at the front, her voice steady but full of passion. Victor Kane thought he could silence Jamal Turner and keep his crimes hidden. But Jamal's life matters. Justice matters. She walked closer to the jury, her eyes meeting each member. "If we let people like Kane go unpunished, we fail not just Jamal, but every worker who stands up for what's right. This isn't just about the law, it's about humanity." When the verdict was announced, the room held its breath. The court finds Victor Kane guilty on all charges. Cheers erupted. Kane was ordered to release Jamal and faced charges for illegal imprisonment, worker abuse, and bribery. Leah's eyes filled with tears as she hugged Mrs. Turner, who whispered, "Thank you for bringing my boy back." A week later, Jamal was found alive in a hidden basement at the factory. He was weak but alive, and the reunion with his mother brought the entire neighborhood to tears. Leah, Marcus, and LaToya decided to channel their victory into something bigger. They formed a group called the Justice Collective, dedicated to fighting for victims of injustice. "This is just the beginning," Leah said with a smile. Victor Kane was arrested, and his factory was shut down. The community felt a sense of victory, but they knew the battle for equality wasn't over. Leah's courage had sparked a movement. Leah's story gained national attention. She was interviewed on major TV networks, her story inspiring people across the country. In one interview, Leah said, "Age doesn't define your ability to make a difference. It's about standing up for what's right." Her journey became a beacon of hope, proving that even a 16-year-old could take on giants and win. For Leah, it wasn't just about winning a case, it was about showing others they could fight for justice no matter their age or circumstances.